Fox News alert on a new line of questions about whether the United States could have pursued any military options during the terror attack, the 7+ hour terror attack that took the lives of 4 Americans in Libya on 9/11. They were murdered. Brand new hour here of America Live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Fox News today has a series of State Department emails showing that senior officials at the White House, the Department of State, and the Pentagon were all alerted that the consulate was under attack, that the ambassador had been placed in a safe room, and that some 20+ men were on the compound with guns as explosions rocked the compound walls. This is the first email dated September 11th, 4:05 p.m. Subject line, U.S. diplomatic mission in Benghazi under attack. This email was sent out 20 minutes after the assault began. We've shown you the video of the attack before, but just listen for a moment to what was happening outside of the walls at that moment. You see the fire? The ambassador went into a safe room inside the compound with a security guard and one other. They set fire to the consulate. The furniture was set on fire. The flames, the fumes, the smoke engulfed the safe room, according to the State Department, and ultimately the men were forced to run for their lives. It did not work out. The assault lasted some 7 hours. Afterward, they found the 2 Navy SEALs who died slumped over a machine gun position with signs that they kept fighting even after suffering critical shrapnel wounds. Now, that was 7 hours later those 2 Marines were killed. How did that happen? Sorry, this is the SEALs. Now the question about whether we could have done more to prevent this. They were getting real-time reporting. 7 hours between the first attack and the second that took the second 2 lives. And there are questions about whether we could have done more, and if so, why we didn't. For that, we turn to Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon. Jennifer?
Hi, Megyn. Well, U.S. officials argue that strafing the streets of Benghazi while not knowing exactly what was going on would have been a mistake, and the reason more military assets weren't moved is they feared an ambush. Here's what the Pentagon did do. They sent special operators from Tripoli, a small group of special operators. A fast team of Marines was sent from Rota Naval Air Station to guard the embassy, but they remained in Tripoli. A special operations force was moved from Central Europe to Sigonella Air Base in southern Italy, just 480 miles from Benghazi, but they did not move to Benghazi. F-16s and Apache helicopters remained parked at Aviano Air Base in northern Italy. 2 Navy destroyers already in the Mediterranean were moved off the coast of Libya on the day of the attack.
For the United States military to say that they were 480 miles away and they couldn't do anything and they couldn't move 1 aircraft in 8 hours, I'd say it's time to relieve a lot of people in the chain of command. But I just don't believe that.
The fighting at the consulate was over within 1 hour, according to the recently leaked State Department emails obtained by Fox News. U.S. officials say a poor intelligence picture on the ground during the attack made the possibility of a friendly fire incident a real possibility, and U.S. officials say they needed permission from the Libyan government for overflight.
If your ambassador has been either killed or captured and is missing at the hands of terrorists, you do not ask any country for Mother May I before you come across the border to save your own. We have many times gone across borders. We do it every day in Pakistan. That's how we killed Osama bin Laden.
Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods were killed by a mortar on the roof of the second location, a CIA annex, at 4 a.m., approximately 7 hours after the initial attack. The machine gun they were firing was caked in blood, we're told, suggesting they continued firing and fighting long after they were hit. Ex-military officials that we've spoken to said much more could have been done to help at that second location, the CIA annex. Megyn?
Jennifer, thank you. Before any of these internal emails could reveal that top White House officials were being informed and top administration officials were being informed in real time about the attack on our consulate, General Jack Keane, who has been in the Situation Room with presidents past, joins us now with his take on these emails and what they say about the administration's narrative in the days and weeks after the attack. General, welcome to you. He's, of course, also a former Vice Chief of Staff of the Army and a 4-star general. I want to pick up on where Jennifer Griffin left off. You and I both read the report that the State Department put out the night before they had to give congressional testimony and talked about how it reads like a movie script. These guys came under fire at the consulate. They moved the ambassador into the safe room. The security guys rushed to his aid, moved him and Sean Smith into the safe room at the consulate. But then the terrorists lit the consulate on fire. They were lighting this Middle Eastern furniture, they said, the fumes, the smoke. They were in a locked room. We've got video of it. Love to see it. Greg Palkot got there after the fact, and they had to leave. I mean, they couldn't stay because of the smoke. And there were some reports that Ambassador Stevens may have died or at least been severely affected by smoke inhalation. Then they rode down. They got in the car. There was a chase. They avoided an attempted ambush. And they arrived at the second place, the annex, and that's where the two guys on screen right, the two Navy SEALs were, and they fought valiantly and were murdered nonetheless. And that happened 7 hours later, General, 7 hours later. And now the U.S. military or somebody's telling us that they couldn't send that jet 480 miles, sitting 480 miles away, they couldn't do it because we didn't have permission from the Libyans?
Well, Megan, on this thing, I'm going to have a tendency not to second guess these guys. I mean, the amount of facts that they have, you know, pales by the comparison to some of the facts that we have right now. We know that that consulate was overwhelmed rather rapidly. And what rescued the people there was the security force came down from the annex with some Libyans themselves and got the people who were still alive to evacuate them to that annex. And then a battle ensued at that annex. And believe me, the people at that annex are in direct communication with their headquarters. Everybody's understanding what is taking place. We haven't seen any emails about that, obviously, but assessments were being made between those people on the ground who are calmly, coolly assessing that situation because they've been in situations like this before, and people are making judgments about, should we send another force in here? Should we send aircraft in here? And I believe the people who were making those judgments had the facts, they had ground truth, they had a sense of what was taking place. And I'm not going to second guess the judgment they made, which is they were not going to get there in time, probably with any additional ground forces. The decision was made to evacuate. These guys on the ground there believed they could safely evacuate and get to the airport and get on their airplanes, which they did.
No, but wait a minute. But let me stop you on that, General, because the information, as we understand it, is the attack was underway at the consulate. The cables were coming into Washington. They were saying the ambassador's in the safe room. I mean, it was happening at that moment. An hour later, they say the attack there had ended, and then the guys leave that first spot, the consulate, and go to the annex. And 7 hours later is when the two Navy SEALs got killed. So, I mean, there's a question about why wasn't the order given? Well, they said we had a Predator drone over there watching, doing something. Why wasn't the order given to send more backup in to do something to protect the second scene?
No, I understand, and that's the point I'm making. I mean, we don't have the information that they was being provided from that facility there. They're very competent people that were at that facility. We don't know what the exchange was and what the facts are and making those judgments. I mean, the truth is we all watch too many movies and 24-type TV shows. These things are not done like that. And to send in some other reaction force that would have got bogged down and have an actually worse situation in your hands is one of the things they're thinking about. To send an aircraft over there, there's probably as many people standing outside that annex watching what is going on and are not players in it. They're innocent bystanders looking at something that doesn't go on every day. And to bring an aircraft over there, could you intimidate somebody with the sound of it? Sure. But are you going to fire on people outside of it with other bystanders looking on and watching, you know, this movie play out in front of them? I doubt it. So all of those kind of things are being factored in. And we got very capable people here, Megan, who are making these kind of judgments. And they're experienced. They've been in tough situations before. And certainly those guys on the ground inside that annex have been in tough situations before. And we don't know what their recommendations were. We have none of those facts.
And General, no one's questioning the skill or commitment of our U.S. military, but there are questions about how this was handled. I mean, the State Department was the one that denied the request for increased security just to keep the security they had. That's what they were asking. The guys on the ground were saying, please increase, and if you won't increase it, please just let us keep what we have on the ground. We see al-Qaeda as a growing threat. We believe the ambassador's on an al-Qaeda hit list. Please give us something, and the answer was no. And then
that's
State
appalling.
Department official Charlene Lamb testified the security that day was adequate. And so there are questions about, you know, who's running the show, who's making the decisions, and who is going to be held responsible.
But that's a different issue. I mean, now we're talking about security prior to the attack as opposed to what to do after the attack took place. 6 months of attacks against Western interests are taking place in Benghazi. 2 of those against our very own U.S. consulate, one to try to kill the UK ambassador. And they're arguing over a handful of security people when we're in a high-threat situation. That became a high-threat situation. Make no mistake about it. We have hundreds of people protecting a high-threat situation in Baghdad today. We have hundreds of people protecting a high-threat situation in Kabul, Afghanistan. We know how to do that, and it never should have been at the state that it was. And that'll be the major finding of the investigation, is that the security was totally inadequate and was never set right. And when the threat went up, and clearly it did, it should have been fixed, and it was not.
Explain to us, as somebody who's a 4-star general who's been in the Situation Room with presidents in the past, what does it mean when we see on these emails that they went to the Situation Room at the moment of the attack, during the attack?
Well, don't overstate my involvement with presidents in the Situation Room. But the fact of the matter is that the operational reports, and this is important for the audience to understand, the operational reports from any activity that's in crisis goes right up their chain of command, and that happened from the Tactical Operations Center inside the consulate to the embassy in Tripoli and also to the State Department. As the State Department Crisis Action is receiving that, so is the White House Situation Room receiving it, as it would be on something that would be going on in Iraq or Afghanistan involving one of our facilities. Those things are done routinely, and so that information was real time. They had operational real-time situation awareness, and they knew there was no demonstration prior to it. What is mystifying to me is why was those on-scene reports, real-time reports, that got to the White House National Security Council and inside the State Department, why were they dismissed and not used to report the very next day on what the situation was? And we were still talking about the possibility of a demonstration and a film and all of those kind of motivations for the attack. That is mystifying, and the American people deserve an explanation.
General Keane, always appreciate getting your true expertise, and that cannot be overstated. So we appreciate it. Fair and balanced. Always love having you.